nyunga kaya nuka pura chinining kaya nuka pura chinining nalabuja warandi nalabuja warandi hey nyunga nambiwa hey puranga nyunga nambiwa hey
The 28th is a day of inclusion. So the Aboriginal community have decided to hold a massive smoking ceremony at the Roundhouse. It was a jailhouse, and it's where the Aboriginal men were held before transportation to Wanjamup, or what's now commonly known as Rottnest Island.
I was only a young man when I first went to Rottnest Island. We got a phone call from the Rottnest Island mob that there was burning skulls and bones. So when we arrived on Rottnest Island, one of the workers ran up and said, "See the black smoke? They're burning the bones." So quickly my father ran over and told him to stop what they was doing, desecrating and burning our young men who's been on the islands, who never went home, who died on the island.
To the settlers and to the descendants of those settlers that have made it here today, I take my hat to you for your courage that you came here too. It's not an easy thing.
Colonialism has left our people marginalised and will still continue to feel this impact through systemic and institutionalised racism.
We fought this war for over 247 years in this country. So today, welcome to the Cultural Revolution. Welcome to the place where we as people have found our right to practice our customary culture on our budja, on the forefront of Bathers Beach, the very place which Charles Fremantle landed his HMAS Challenger and first stepped foot to claim this whole side of Western Australia as New Holland. Today, we threw our boomerangs, our Kylies, and we threw our old Kylie. This one here, I'll hold up, as I said, over 400 years old. Made by an old man before the Wargles ever came to our shores, carved from wood by stone. He didn't know of any of the sicknesses. He didn't know what was to come. He spoke only his tongue. He practiced his ceremonies. His woman practiced hers. They lived in a relationship with the land and the earth like utopia. They looked after the earth. The three boys represent three major totems of our people of the Bibbulmun Nations. The first one is young Robert Eggington. He's wearing the feathers of the Karak, the red-tailed black cockatoo, the firebringer. The second young boy will be wearing the feathers of the Yelga, the wedge-tailed eagle. His name's Jimmy Miller. The third young Kullinga, Jake Eggington, is wearing the feathers of our Moities, the feathers of the Wardong, the black crow, and the white feathers of the Manich, the white cockatoo. That boomerang will be raised whilst Jimmy Miller throws a boomerang directly towards Wanjamup, to the island. And that boomerang is a message of our old people that we never forgot them, or their pain, or their suffering. And that will mark the opening for the ceremonial speeches here today and the songs that will be sung.
Ngala kasya ninin ngang kinangan ngang kora ngang kinangan bere ngala bere kaya. Ngala boja kinangan bonyo boja kinangan bo kinangan bo.
Here rhythmic black performance cause vast crowds to sway. Soulful mesmeric lyrics put broken hearts on display. For words of hope and freedom offered a brand new day. As daylight kisses darkness, children laugh, dance and play. Kaya Kayana, a means to survive. Kaya Kayana, from which Noongar strive. Kaya Kayana, our culture on display. Kaya Kayana, celebrating Indigenous way.
They were chained and they were shackled and they were forced from the heat of the deserts, the gorges of the riverlands and the coastal areas of the Kimberley. From the rock crops and the gorges of the Pilbara, they were dragged, and also here from our land of flowers. Truganini, the great Palawa Tasmanian woman elder, was 19 years old. Yagan, our resistance fighter, was murdered 2 years later at the age of 38. Pamaway, the great Koori warrior, was killed 10 years earlier. He waged a guerrilla war against the British that lasted 12 years. Jandamara, known as Pigeon, was born 42 years later and was one of only a few organised insurrections against the British colonisation of Australia. When this, one of the most barbaric, brutal and ruthless portals of the English Empire, was erected and opened to hold Aboriginal men prior to be transported to Wandjina, known as Rottnest Island. The year was 1831. Rottnest Island was not a prison and the men taken there were not prisoners. This island was a concentration camp of war, and the men taken there were captives of the war strategies that removed them from their homelands and their families so the British could occupy the land. The Holocaust of genocide has been burning in this country for the past 247 years. As our men were forced, chained and shackled to walk from vast distances across tribal boundaries, they would have seen strange things begin to happen. They would have walked through and across ceremonial grounds that they would have known was Warra and punishable by death under their law. Their men would have felt the spiritual power of the ceremonial ground of women's law. They would have closed their eyes into darkness and just kept moving forward, putting their trusted guidance not in the devils on horseback or the black trackers that held the lead chains, but in the great rainbow serpent, the Wargle, the creator of all of the earth's formations and our spiritual world. They knew that there was no diversion from the atrocities. Our Mother Earth, the Budja, wept her tears for the children that she birthed, as in their suffering she would have sent to their dreams the sweet essence of the banksia, the unique and the rare sandalwood, the scent of the flowers to calm their spirits. She would have gently lifted their heads and pointed their eyes to the night skies to again see the traditional stories that were formed in the stars. Again, the traditional stories that were also the song lines across this country were the same ones in which our old people followed the star stories. She would have sent the warmth of the Kala, the fire, to keep away the cold and make them feel spiritually strong and protected. The Kappa to quench their thirst and wrap the dead up in her budja as they fell into her arms. She would have never abandoned them and would have sent the old grandmothers to carry home the dead. She would have known that the white man was coming. Through the birthing channels of her womb into the law grounds of the wetlands, our Kulungas crawled. And there they returned to our Mother Earth. Our Budja is alive, a living entity that gives birth to all living things. The campfires that burn peacefully and the greatest stories of knowledge is shared by the wisdom of the storytellers. A secret war has ravaged the humanity of our people. It continues to this very day, where now the impacts of genocide stem from the hearts of our young people who make conscious decisions to no longer live in this world that has no place for their belonging or their worth, where their culture is monopolised to theatrics and played out to entertain the white man's macabre sense to feel good about a history of political aspiration that has led to the death and the misery of all it touches with its treachery and trickery. This is their greatest weapon that they now challenge to destroy our spirit and our culture. We have merged into a spiritual warfare where we cannot afford to lose and we have little time left to fail. There is something in the indoctrination of fear of the religious belief systems of foreign gods, when you yourselves ridicule the hypocrisy of the truths of the philosophies of the prophets and then feed off the evil of the greed and the privilege of wealth that has been stolen from the very right of the traditional ownership of this country by the Indigenous people, whose blood has soaked the very conscience of your ability to rejoice in the affluence of lies and deceit. For deep within the shadows of your eyes are the reflections of a bitterness of guilt that will haunt and plague your identity and nationhood forever. As your eyes glance seaward bound across the waters, knowing that your true homelands and ancestral lines lay within the northern hemisphere of this world. This may be in simple terms and must have been at the heart of the Fremantle Council's decision to stop the party. To stop the celebrations of the death, the misery, the pain and the suffering of the Indigenous people of Australia in celebrating and rejoicing in a nationhood of identity built on the bedrock of genocide. This must be an ongoing change to the status quo in the encouragement that other councils in the future will, for all the right and humane reasons, would want to follow. That hopefully this ceremony will continue every year on this date, at this time, for the cleansing and for the healing of all of our people. And we hope that we can encourage Aboriginal people right across Australia, right across our country, to start the same revolution in every language group, in every part of this land. Our message to our young people is simply to be proud of your heritage and your culture. Never become what they want you to believe you are, and follow the ways of our old people. Our beliefs and our culture. It's a spiritual belief system. Our culture is not a product for sale, for the investment within a marketplace. Stay true to your cultural identity and strive towards your sense of belonging. This is your birthright to the oldest living culture on the most ancient landmass on the face of the earth. We must recolonise our minds from the deceit and the lies that have censored us from the truth of history. We must seek the knowledge that the education curriculums have severed from the access of our rights and free our minds from the monopolised idealisms that the media portray of who we are as people. For I would have not preferred to live than to be censored, to live in the will of the masters who control every thought and action. We don't need their thought control, and never let them bleed it out from you, and always beware of the ricochet. Protect all living things, especially the existence of our bird life. For our greatest stories, and where we have merged from, is the moieties of the wardong, the crow, and the manage, the white cockatoo. Hope those young ones who have lost their way in the darkness. who can be heard screaming out in the pain and suffering, lost in dreams that can no longer be interpreted by the wisdom of our elders. Ensure them that they have the right to resist and struggle against the forced assimilation of education and religious belief systems. Take their part, stand with them, don't turn away, and let them know they are not alone in this struggle, and tell them never to give up. Create your minds and your hearts and your ability to express to be your greatest weapons against their will to break your spirit, and bring love to your brothers and sisters, and never see them as strangers, like someone who passes slowly in the distance and eventually out of sight. And never stand up for the national anthem. And may our campfires burn forever.
Por